Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today you'll be English lords in the early 16th century trying to get into the ranks on the court of Henry VIII's Tudor. Now you'll work to gain prestige by placing members of your very own family in positions of influence. You'll be using your privileges wisely that are represented by the rings on your fingers and protect them from the intrigues of other players, but they'll be trying to steal your privileges for their favor. Tudor is a 2 to 4 player game, takes 90 minutes to 2 hours to play, and is a worker placement style strategy game published by Academy Games. It's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and then I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the components and art you see here are prototype components, and you're going to want to check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video to see the final arts and components. I wanted to start by showing you one of the coolest components I've seen in a game in a long time, and that's the hand here. Each player is going to get one of these player shields. Over the course of the game, you're going to be getting rings on different fingers that will give you different privileges and allow you to enhance different actions in the game, but it also doubles as a player shield that you'll be hiding things behind. And it doubles as a player aid, as you can see what the different rings do. I'll go over some of these things later, but I wanted to point this out right off the bat. Now the game comes with a double-sided board. This is the 3 or 4 player side. On the back side, it is a 2-player game. Over the course of the game, you'll be sending your courtiers into the throne room, going on different spaces, and these have court tokens on them, and these represent the demands and interests of some of the different court factions, which you'll be mediating in order to move through these and collecting some of these different court tokens. You'll also be trying to get to the top office of the different types of court factions like Secretary of State, which will then gain you new privileges, and if there's someone else already there, you'll be able to disgrace them and take that office over from them. Now, one of the interesting things in this game is how it's scored. Each game can be scored very differently. There's 2 scoring cards, a red and a green. For instance, we're using scorecard 1 for red and scorecard 6 for green, and you can mix them up randomly, or you could play specific style types of games depending on which cards you select, and each of these are going to basically change the way that you score each game. And I'll briefly touch on this because it's an easy one. We talked about these court tokens. You'll be collecting those as you move through the throne room, and depending on how many of the same type of set you collect, you'll score a certain amount of points at the end of the game. So in this case, the red scorecard is essentially set collection of those court tokens. Now the game is played over a certain amount of rounds depending on the amount of players and depending on another variable thing in the game, which are the scenario cards, which will tell you how long a certain game is depending on the amount of players. In this case, we're going to be playing a 4-round game because we're playing with 4 players, and each of these has a year on it, and it actually has pictures of different wives of King Henry. So there's lots of variability built in with the scoring cards and the scenario cards. We'll go over more of those in detail later. And speaking of variability, all those court tokens you see out there were randomly placed by this bag, and there's plenty in this bag that did not make it out here, so that again gives this game even more replayability. Each round is played over 5 different phases. The first phase is the chamber assignment, where you're going to be placing your courtiers on different seats here, and those seats are going to allow them to go into these different audience chambers, which will allow them to take actions in a future phase. And the amount of courtiers that people are placing depends on the scenario card that you selected for this game. For instance, in round 1, everyone's going to be placing 2 courtiers, and every round after that, they're going to be placing 1. So that changes depending on the scenario card for that game. Now, starting with the start player going clockwise, each player is going to place one of their courtiers on the furthest left spot that's open on the bench that represents which of those audience chambers they're going to be trying to get into. Now again, these are temporary components. This is just a cube. It appears they're going to be meeples in the final result, but again, check the Kickstarter page for that. Now this is a 3 or 4 player board, so the first 3 seats on any bench is up to 3 players, and this 4th seat can be used with 4 players. So after everyone's placed their 2 courtiers in this first round, it might look something like this. Then we go to the second phase, which is the chamber entrance. And going in this order, you're going to do a single file line and go into the seats. They'll go like this, just like that, and they'll get a seat at this specific table, and all of them will do that. So once they've all moved in, it might look something like this. However, in subsequent rounds, these will stay in these seats, and when new courtiers try to come in, they'll actually push these ones down and out. So when these next ones come out, this one will get pushed back to that player, and these will move up. This will come in like this, and then this player will come in and push this one out, and it will go back to that player's supply. So depending on how many people want to come in this room will depend on which one of the courtiers will be able to sit at these seats as the rounds go on. but let's assume it's the first round here, and this is how it is set up. You then go to the third phase of the round, which is called Lord Placement. So again, going from first player and going on, the players will be able to place a Lord into one of the bigger patterned seats on the right side of the table. And again, check the Kickstarter project page because they are going to look a lot cooler than just these little blocks. So each of them will place one of these Lords. Now the placement of these Lords is very important because any audience chamber that does not have a single Lord on that side of the table, none of these courtiers are going to be able to take any actions from this table. And this will change the way that things go with strategy-wise, but let's say, just for instance, that each of the tables had at least one Lord there. The next phase is phase 4, which is the audience chamber actions. And starting with the start player and going clockwise, each player gets to activate one of their pieces, either one of their courtiers or their Lord. They get to decide which order this happens in, but to keep things simple, let's start from the left and go from the right. They get to choose. Now keep in mind that you can only activate a courtier at a table if there is a Lord there as well. Let's say the yellow player is first and they want to activate this courtier. They could do any of them that has not been activated yet, but they choose this one and they place it in this box to show it's off the seat and it's taking an action. And when you're on this side of the table with the courtiers, you can either do the A action or the B action. And all the tables work the same way. If you're on this left side as a courtier, you're choosing the action. So let's go over these different choices that they have. Now this action allows you to either add one of your courtiers to the throne room or move a courtier that's already there in one of these 4 cardinal directions, 1 space. But the place you go on, the court token has to match a ring type that you have. So for example, we look at the rings that I started with. Everyone starts with 2 through a drafting process at the beginning of the game, and I have a purple and a red one there. Now when placing a new courtier onto the board, you can place it on the bottom there, and you cannot place it on top of if there's already a courtier there since you're only moving 1. So I can place it here or here because I have both of those rings. So let's say I place it here. I would put this here, I would take this court token, and I would take this. There's 2 types of tokens underneath all these. They're either black or white. The black ones are intrigue tokens and the white ones are influence tokens, but I get to take both of these for now and my courtier would be just like that. Now if I had taken that action and I already had my courtier here, I could move in any cardinal direction assuming that that court token matches one of the types of rings that I have. Well, now you know how to get those influence and intrigue round tokens. Let's tell you what they do. Well, every game, there's a certain scoring at the end, and you'll get a certain amount of points depending on the total amount of those 2 tokens, plus some of those court cards that we haven't showed too much of yet. Also, for this specific game, the green scoring card says I can, as soon as I get an influence or an intrigue token, I can discard it out of the game to immediately place one of my courtiers here. And it becomes an ambassador, and at the end of the game, each one there will be worth 11 points. So I could have discarded that token to place my courtier there for 11 points at the end of the game. Other ways to use those tokens can happen with the scenario card, which again is different each game. You could discard that immediately, that intrigue token, to swap any 2 of those court tokens on the board, and as you've already seen, those are important for moving through the throne room. Or you could discard 2 of those influence tokens, and even if one of your courtiers are activated already, you can remove them from there and place them on one of the benches outside to try to get in there for the next round. Now this player already did their turn, so we'd go to the next player, they would activate and so on and so forth, but I'm just going to go over all the different table actions now. This one allows you to take a ring off of one of your fingers and put it back into the supply, take another ring, place it on that same finger, and you get a court card of that same ring type. Now here I have purple and red on my fingers, so hypothetically if I was taking that action, I know that I want to be moving up this throne room if possible to get towards the top office, and I already got purple, but maybe I'm going to want green. And there's still a green ring left, so I can take one of these and the court card. So essentially I'd be able to swap that ring out that I did not want for the one that I have on that same finger and put that ring back in the supply. Now this C action allows you to move 1 or 2 spaces forward, or you can add one to the bottom row like normal, but every time you go to a spot, you have to discard one that matches. That's with that check mark. So if I was going up, I would need to discard one of those court cards in order to do that, and these are really important for moving like that, and that's what that action does. Now the D action allows you to take a matching court card from 2 different types, assuming you have those rings on your hand. So if you remember, I have a green and a purple ring. That would allow me to take a green and a purple court card and add it to my supply. The E action is going to allow you to move forward 1 to 7 spots, but you're going to have to discard a specific court card for each of those court tokens you come in contact with, or you could start and then move 6, because going onto the lowest part of that throne counts as 1 movement. And F allows you to just take any court card of your choice. Now, we talked about activating these and they come off the seat like that. What about the lords? When you activate a lord, the lord gets to do either or both of these if they want to, and in any order. So the lords are more powerful, they'll get to do both actions. Remember, the courtiers are doing one or the other at that table, assuming there's a lord at that table. Now here's a couple of alternate actions, G and H. If you did not want to take some of the other actions where you're at, you could essentially activate one of these. G allows you to move forward 1 on the throne floor, or just bring a guy onto that bottom row of that throne floor, but you have to discard one of those court cards that matches the court token that you're moving into. And H allows you to take a court card of a ring type that you have on your finger. Now I'm showing you the back of the player aid flat here because there's actually 2 bonus actions you can take. Once per round, not once per turn, you can discard any 2 of those different court tokens. Remember, those are the small tokens that you're picking up as you're going through the throne floor, and you essentially can move one of your courtiers 1 in any of these cardinal directions, and it doesn't matter what color the token is that you're moving to. Now the other one can be used infinitely times per round, and these bonus actions are in addition to any of your other normal actions. This allows you to exchange or discard down 2 of the court cards to get any 1 card of your choice. Now you must be wondering what these rings do, so let's talk a little bit about that. I have rings here. Now anytime you add or remove a ring, you can rearrange them on any fingers. Now not when you exchange a ring, but when you add or remove a ring, you can move these around any way you want. So let's say I have rings like this. Now if we look at this chart here, this here D shows the 2 left fingers. We have this one and this one. Plus, if you look closely, there's an outline of this brown sort of rectangle here that also, if you look quickly, will show you what the action does, but it also shows you which fingers you need in order to have this done. For example, F has the 2 end fingers, which I have rings on. It has a little brown rectangle here and a brown rectangle here. So when you look at this, you can see which fingers you need rings on quickly to see which actions you can activate. And when I say activate, I mean these are essentially enhancements to all of the actions that I've already taught you. Now all of them had letters, if you remember, and each of these have letters. So whichever letter it's talking about, it will enhance that action. For example, this D action, it used to be you could draw 2 different court cards that match rings that are on your finger. So normally I could take maybe a black and a green, or a purple and a green, or a purple and a black. But now you can actually take 2 cards of the same ring. So I could take 2 purples, or 2 greens, or 2 blacks when I take that D action. Now the F action used to be you could just take any 1 court card that you want. Well, now you can take any 2 court cards, but discard any court card that you don't want from your hand. And all the others, they do certain more powerful things based upon the original action. The last phase is sort of the end of a round phase where different things will happen depending on which cards are in play, but generally what happens is they essentially go back in their chairs, they don't move, but all the lords get removed, and some other things happen that aren't too important to you right now. Now you've seen me moving up this throne column here, and as you remember, you can move in different directions depending on certain actions, but I was trying to get to this spot because anytime you get to a spot that's just under an office, you take these like normal, but then you can essentially get the top office. And when you do that, you get to take a ring of your choice from the supply, and you get to put it on any finger. Now remember, anytime you add or subtract a ring from your finger, you can rearrange them all. However, if later someone else takes this top office, this player is disgraced, it comes back to their supply, and this player gets to take a ring off that player's finger and add it to one of their fingers. So once you're done with those 5 phases, you'd go to the next round. In this case, we were playing 4 rounds, then the game would end. And then you'd score based upon the scoring cards that you used for this game. For this red one, you'd look at each of the court token types and you'd see how many you have. In this case, I have 4 purples, so that would give me 10 points. I have 1 of these, that would give you 1 point, and so on and so forth. And this one, you get 11 points for each of your courtiers that's there. And then for this one, you'd see who has the most total intrigue and influence and court cards, and you'd get first, second, third place depending on the amount of players. That's how many points you'd get. And if there was a tie in that last scoring, you would split the points. Whoever has the most is the winner. And if it's tied, whoever has the most court cards is the winner. Still tied, whoever has the most influence and or intrigue tokens. And if it's still tied, whoever has the most rings on the finger. And if it's still tied, well, play again. Well, there you have Tudor, and as I've shown in the overview, it uses worker placement as its main mechanism, but with some other twists like activating opponents' courtiers in the same area of your own. But it also has some unique aspects like putting the rings on fingers for special privileges. Now Tudor also has variable goals and game mechanics, and every game you choose these, so each game will be different and you'll need to adapt your strategies. Now if you'd like to see the final art, components, and the different types of pledge levels that are available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video and it will take you directly to the Kickstarter project page for Tudor, and I'm sure the fine folks at Academy Games would love your support.